Hey everyone, this is David Brown, and in this video, I'm going to go through the Raptor totals from the 2026 season of the Derby Hill Hawkwatch. Let's start off with Black Vulture. We had 13 Black Vultures this season, which was a new record, and compared to the 10-year average, that total was 433% of the 10-year average. So if this number were 100, it would mean it exactly tied the average of the previous 10 seasons. If it was 50, that would mean it was half of that. If it was 200, it would be twice. So over 400, more than 4 times the 10-year average. And in the chart here, it actually goes back more than 10 years. It goes all the way back to 2014. You can see overall with Black Vultures, there's an increasing trend, although that may mostly be driven by the high total this year of 13. It was also a record season for turkey vultures with 40,059. That was 145% of the 10-year average. And you can see by the linear trend line that turkey vulture numbers seem to be going up and up and up. In 2020, we broke 30,000 for the first time. Last year, we broke 35,000. And now in 2026, we broke 40,000. So it will be interesting to see how those numbers continue to rise into the future. How high can they go? For ospreys, we had 309, and that was below average, only 81% of the 10-year average. And you can see that in recent history, it seems there's a downward trend. We had 68 golden eagles this season, which was a bit above average, 111% of the 10-year average. And since 2014, it has been an upward trend for golden eagles. For sharp-shinned hawks, we had 3,447, which was above the 10-year average, 120%. And looking at the trend line, it's nearly horizontal. So over this time period, there really hasn't been much of a change for sharp-shins, although you can see with individual years, there's certainly up years and down years. For Cooper's hawks, we had 314, which was a bit above the 10-year average. And over the time period of the graph, there's a slight upward trend. We had 2 American goshawks this season, which was only 1/3 of the 10-year average, and you can see that there's a bit of a concerning downward trend for this species. We had 627 northern harriers, which was above the 10-year average, and you can see in 2025, we really had a banner year for northern harriers. We didn't get anywhere near that number this year, but it was still above average, and there's an increasing trend for harriers. For bald eagles, we had 1,313, which was above the 10-year average, and it looks like that was the 3rd highest season ever. 2025 was a record year, then it looks like 2020, and then 2026. So getting well over 1,000 bald eagles pretty regularly in recent years, and there is a strongly increasing trend for bald eagles. We had a good season for broad-winged hawks with 45,914, which was above the 10-year average, and I believe this was also the 3rd highest ever. You can see back in 2019, that was the highest, followed by 2025, and then this year, 2026, just slightly lower, and broad-winged hawks are showing an increasing trend. The red-shouldered hawk total was 499, which was just slightly below the 10-year average. And you can see overall this was a somewhat low year, but there is a slightly increasing trend over the period of the graph. We had 1 Swainson's hawk this season, which is pretty average. You can see most years we either get 1 or 0, with 2024 being the exception when there were 4 of them. For red-tailed hawks, we had 2,898, which was just above the 10-year average, and you can see that was a higher total than the previous 4 seasons. And over the period of the graph, there's a slightly decreasing trend for red tails. We had 65 rough-legged hawks, which was 81% of the 10-year average. And looking at the trend line, you can see there's a worrying decrease in rough-legged hawks. Moving on to falcons, for American kestrel, we had 445, which was 123% of the 10-year average. And you can see over the period of the graph, there's a slight increase for American kestrels. For merlins, we had a total of 81, which was 135% of the 10-year average. And the trend line is showing a slight increase for merlins. It was a somewhat low year for peregrine falcons with only 12, which is half of the 10-year average. But even despite that, over the period of the graph, it does show a slight increase, mostly because of these years in the middle when there were good numbers. And looking at all raptors combined, we had a total of 96,067, which is the second highest season total ever. and 136% of the 10-year average. If we take a look at the trend line, we see that season totals seem to be increasing. I would suspect that that's mostly being driven by the increases in turkey vultures and broad-winged hawks, and that the species that are declining we get much fewer of, so it's not enough to counteract the increases in those species that we get a lot of. So I would suspect that if turkey vulture numbers and broad-winged numbers keep going up, that we'll continue to keep getting higher and higher season totals for the foreseeable future. I hope this brief summary helps to put this season in better perspective for everyone. From Lyco Birds, this is David Brown. Thanks for watching.